Hello everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again. And we're just going to talk about boxing now and this ongoing, almost series if you like now, of focus videos that I'm doing regarding the coronavirus outbreak and how it's having an impact on certain sports. So in the past I've done videos on the current events going on within football and also within tennis. So we're just going to talk about boxing now, and I'm sure everybody does know now, but for anybody that doesn't know, the British Board of Boxing Control have made a statement saying now that all fights planned for the next 2 weeks have now been cancelled. So British Boxing Board of Control Secretary Robert Smith, and he's basically said, with regard to the above and the statement made by the Prime Minister Boris Johnson, all public tournaments under the jurisdiction of the British Boxing Board of Control are unfortunately cancelled. Further consideration of the matter will take place at the beginning of April. So yeah, this is just falling in line with all other events and all other events within sport, within entertainment, just general within life now. It's just protocol that any events that were booked, certainly for anything from the 6 to 12 weeks, are going to be postponed, are going to be cancelled. So yeah, it's nothing shocking there, it's nothing controversial. I don't think at this stage where we are with the virus, any fan is going to have a problem or an issue with it going forward. Of course, one of the big fights that is going to be postponed to a later date is, of course, Daniel Dubois against Joe Joyce, and I believe that was due to take place around about April time. I've done a previous video on my thoughts on that fight and regarding the fact that was put on pay-per-view. I don't think it was put on pay-per-view, so that fight would get cancelled. And there was also an interesting statement by Eddie Hearn where he kind of said, well, all of the smaller events or the smaller shows we may want to do, or we might be prepared to play behind closed doors, but the bigger fights and the bigger shows, we're not prepared to do that. So that's a very interesting statement there. Now, when you look at this, you need to kind of get a perspective of the different sports and where they are. So as I've spoken in previous videos, you have boxing, you have tennis, you have football, etc., rugby, etc. Now, I've mentioned before, those sports are unified sports. They're under one governing body, one controlling kind of hierarchy, right? So when you get events like this, where it affects everybody involved, there's much more of a unified, pull together effort to try and support each other and make sure not everybody is stranded and kind of left alone and left out of it, right? I've seen reports recently when they're talking about potential loans, let's say for example the football, right, where they're talking about potential loans being made to the smaller clubs, okay, so that they don't, fall under the struggle, because at the moment football's been postponed and they're not sure whether the season's going to get picked up or not. But let's say if it was voided, which I don't think will happen, that the smaller clubs won't get left in the cold. Boxing doesn't have that same kind of mindset. As I've said before, it is very much a fragmented vacation where you've got each promotional company on their own trying to make money on their own, right? And pay-per-view is a large element of that. As I've said again, pay-per-view is a way that they can kind of increase the profit, increase the kind of pay, if you like, for the fighters, right? It doesn't benefit the sport in any way possible, okay? So the fact that, oh no, the pay-per-views won't be paid behind closed doors. So in general, we're talking about the Dylan White against Alexander Povetkin, which was due to take place on May the 2nd, I believe. Then obviously Usyk and Chisora was May the 28th. And then Joshua and Kubrat Pulev was due to take place on June the 20th. So in short, no, they wouldn't play behind closed doors. Whereas you look at football, if it's going to try and finish the season, would play these games behind closed doors. Boxing will not have these fights played behind closed doors. Not because, yes, okay, it's a health risk, but because it's more of the fact that if they did, then they're going to lose out on money, right? Okay, they still get the money from the pay-per-view, but they don't get money from the gate, right? The revenue, the ticket sales from the gate. They don't get none of that. right? And as I said, because it's more a promotional company funding the matches on their own, they can't afford to take that kind of loss, right? They just can't afford to do that. So regarding these pay-per-view fights, Eddie Hearn saying, "Oh, we want them played behind closed doors," that's no real surprise to me. That's just, they're not going to limit their potential to earn money, and it's a lot less of a necessary cause, if you like. So I know it seems like I'm being negative, but what I mean by that is, when we go back to football or tennis, you're dealing with, again, a whole collective of teams, a whole collective of players, right? You're talking about a whole season or a whole tour, which everybody involved is affected by whether that season or that tour can get completed, right? So it's all one kind of cyclical process. Let's look at the 3 fights, right? Being blunt here, let's say if Dillian Whyte and Povetkin got called off, okay, what impact would it have? Have none, right? No impact. Okay, yes, of course, boxing fans, it's a big fight that they won't get to see, but in general, what impact does it have if you said, right, Dillian Whyte and Povetkin is not going to be made? None. To the sport of boxing, right, within the whole, the sport of boxing, it has no effect. If we said Usyk and Chisora is going to get cancelled now, okay, nothing happens to boxing, right? If we say Joshua and Kubrat Pulev, postpone it to another date, Joshua still keeps his belts, Pulev still keeps his mandatory shot, no change there, nothing happens, you see, right? So there's not as much, from where I'm coming from, there's not as, we're missing big fights, and yes, the hardcore boxing fan is not going to like the fact that, that these fights aren't happening. And don't get me wrong, these are all interesting fights. When they took place, I was going to cover them, all of them, and give reviews and insight into all of them. I'm not saying that, but when you look at the broader picture and the overall picture, the sport of boxing isn't as reliant on these fights, right, as what football is on the season ending, as what tennis is on the season ending, if you see what I'm saying, right? It's not a case of, and all the money from Dillian Whyte against Alexander Povetkin is going to be taken in and spread right out throughout the sport, and they're going to set up a pension fund for fighters, and they're going to put money into the grassroots and the younger fighters so they've got chances to come up. No, it's not. That money goes to Dillian Whyte, goes to Povetkin, it goes to all their teams, it goes to DAZN and Matchroom and Sky and their promoters, and that's it, right? So it's not an essential piece, or an essential cause, rather, if these fights are getting cancelled. That's why I'm not as kind of, yes, I'm disappointed, but I'm not as, I can see, the greater good, and the fact that these fights to me are not as essential. And maybe that's just me just burned out by the constant mismatches and the overloading of pay-per-views, that maybe that's just me. I'm just a bit jaded of it all. As a newer fan or an experienced fan, you may feel different. And you're going to be very despondent at the fact that all these fights are getting cancelled, but it is for the greater good, And essentially, if you think about it, right, if they were necessary, let's look at the other way. If they were necessary fights, you could play them behind closed doors, right? 2 fighters, so obviously you would test them and check them to make sure that they're okay. You would check all their coaching staff, coaching team. You would check the referees. You wouldn't need to check test the judges, because the judges could just be in a separate room, just a bit like what we have for the VAR. Right, the commentators, they're in another booth, so they're safe. So if these fights were this essential part of the sport, you could just play behind closed doors if you want to get it made, right? So that's another way of looking at it, right? These fights could play behind closed doors, and then you just carry on. No, they're not, because A, the sport is not reliant on these fights, and B, there's no way that the promoters are going to put on a fight where they're going to lose money because they won't get the ticket revenue. We've spoken many times about other sports, right? Playing stuff behind closed doors, they're going to lose out loads of money, right? So there's no way the boxing is going to have these events on when they're funding the events themselves, and they're going to lose that money themselves, because like I said, there's no one unified governing body within boxing that's going to recompensate these people if they play these fights behind closed doors. So that's really how I have to look at it. This is more really of an idealistic video from me, and what my views on it, I know, but it's just a view on how you look at boxing, and the fact that yes, the virus hits all sports. I understand that, but you just have to understand that it just doesn't impact the sport the way that I feel football would be impacted if you stopped the whole season, or tennis if you stopped the whole tour, right? Or let's say Formula One, if you stopped the whole Formula One, it would have way more significant impact, right, than it would within boxing. So it's no surprise on there, you know. So just moving on from that, so just quickly, we're getting strange announcements, if you like, kind of half announcements. So we all knew that Canelo was looking for an opponent, and they were talking about Callum Smith, they were talking about Billy Joe Saunders, and it's kind of weird because when you look on social media, people are almost announcing these fights before the actual promoters are, right? We all know that people within social media, they get inside information, they get tipped off, heads off about information. I understand that. And of course, we have the element of people who will go with those just for clicks. I understand all that. But it's just been strange how many fans were already decided, right? So we go on Canelo that he was going to fight Billy Joe, right? They literally were making videos, doing fight previews. Yeah, this fight's going to happen, etc., etc. We know they were in talks, right? But then we find out later on that he's now seemingly decided that he's going to fight GGG in the trilogy, right? So again, even though fans are going along with it, as far as I know, and up to this moment, as far as I know, there's been no kind of official announcement. There's been no kind of confirmation from De La Hoya or Tom Knopfler on this. So it's kind of one of those where I'm not going to make videos on every rumour or speculation. You know, show me when you've got the kind of promoters together in a press conference announcing the fight. Then I know it's kind of on its way to happening. Then I'm going to cover it, because you do get a lot of rumours and speculations within boxing. You've got this whole thing right now with Tyson Fury, and what was it, the farmer, and how he was asked to hide Fury's test, or help Fury conceal his tests, you know. And then there's other narratives going on with Fury cheating, with the Wilder and the whole glove gate. And again, I could do another video. I mean, sometimes I stay away from all that, because again, I know it's more speculation, especially done to kind of further people's agendas. They're biased, and just to, if you like, get the clicks and the views. And I don't really want to get into all of that. I just want to deal with what happens, the facts, and what's actually happened, what fights are actually happening. So if Canelo and Golovkin sign on the dotted line and we see them at a press conference, I will then do a preview video on that. Same with Billy Joe Saunders, right? I will then do a preview video on that. So that's kind of what else is going on at the moment with boxing. So the question is now, what's going to happen with the White and Povetkin fight? What was it, May the 2nd? I'm guessing that's going to be postponed as well. I just think it's too near, it's too close. I also think the Usyk and Chisora fight is going to be postponed as well. I just think anything in May is going to be too close. Now, Josh and Povetkin might... And again, as I say with all of these videos that I'm doing, it's all relying on what happens with the virus and how slow or how much the spread can be slowed down to the point where people can feel confident enough about going outside into large gatherings. But you have to remember, they're holding at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and they want to aim for 70,000 people. So maybe that's too drastic a step. You'd like to think once we come out of any kind of quarantine lockdown situation and we're at a lot more of a positive phase with this virus, you'd start off with small gatherings, right? You wouldn't just say, oh, today coronavirus is over, you can go back out into large gatherings. No, because they don't want the risk of outbreak to come up again. So they want to kind of ease their way back into it with small gatherings first. So to then jump into a staging fight where you're holding 70,000 people might be a bit too much. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Joshua Pulev fight gets postponed as well. Like I said, it's not a mega hype fight, is it? It's just a standard mandatory for Joshua, isn't it? So again, we'll wait and see on that. But yeah, I just wouldn't be surprised if all the big kind of pay-per-views that we've got coming up in the next couple of months all get postponed. It just wouldn't surprise me in any way or fashion on that. And like I said, once I know for sure that the Canelo is fighting GGG for the third time, I'll do a preview fight on that. So it's kind of those ones again. I think GGG is just hanging out. That's why, you know, he's 38 now, and he's kind of just been hanging out for this kind of one big massive payday on here. And again, I'm not going to talk any more about the Tyson Fury stuff until we get confirmation from commissions or testing board agencies. You know, they're already on shaky ground already, you know, with the whole Canelo Computero issue, and of course with the whole Dylan White UCAD stuff with Oscar Rivas as well. So this is the thing about boxing. I'm not going to go on about that, but it's just the way the sport is. It's just, you know, just shady and just lacking integrity behind the scenes, right? So yeah, those are my thoughts now on just really what the effects the virus is having within the sport. Again, I agree completely with all sports postponing events. You know, like I said, public health and safety is the number one priority above all. Just don't buy into this whole, oh, we won't play behind closed doors, because again, they're just looking for their own financial gain. Okay, not the sport of boxing. Okay, because all these pay-per-views, they don't help boxing. Okay, no matter how many views or ratings or pay-per-view income they bring in, you have to remember these fights are made for the individuals themselves. So don't kind of get into this whole, well, this pay-per-view's cancelled, the sport suffers. No, the sport can, you know, go on. You know, these are not essential fights that aid in the boxing, okay? These are just profit exercises for everybody involved within the promotion, okay? So that's kind of my cynical view, okay? But that's just the way it is within boxing, okay? So yeah, that's my thoughts for now. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Are you majorly disappointed that all these fights are postponed for now and seemingly getting cancelled? Are you super hyped for GGG and Canelo third fight? Or do you think, you know, GGG can't really win unless he gets knocked out? Which fights do you think will kind of go ahead, and which fights do you think will eventually get cancelled? Let me know in the comments below. Sorry for a kind of more sarcastic look at boxing, but you know, when you've seen boxing for one, when you've watched it for a number of years, and you see what goes on, and you just see the way everything works, you know, you just get a much more of a kind of a sort of cynical look at the sport. But it's just the way it is within boxing. But yeah, those are my thoughts for now. I'll keep doing updates. Like I said, I'll wait for certain updates to follow through together, and then I'll kind of do a bit of a summary like I've done here. So that's it for now. Take care of yourselves. As I say, all my videos at the moment, wash your hands, keep yourself at safe distances, stay healthy, and take care, and I will see you very soon.